ain't no daddy at home, because the daddy's responsibility was to teach the discipline. When the mom is responsible for teaching the discipline, all due respect to the ladies, that's not a natural responsibility of a mother. You're maternal. You're feminine. Your job is to love and to nurture. The man's job is to patrol and control. And when the man is not in that home, the discipline program gets left behind, and you get white folk making money off the fact that daddy's not home. Now look at the hypocrisy now. America has the highest incarceration rate on the planet. And most men, black men in jail, are in jail for nonviolent, drug-related offenses. In other words, he was selling crack and speed and heroin on the street. And he was selling crack and speed and heroin on the street because he couldn't find a decent job through which he could earn enough to take care of his family. So they locked him up, 5-10 years mandatory minimum sentence for selling narcotics, right? He broke the law. It's wrong to sell drugs, right? Drugs are bad. Nancy Reagan, just say no, right? But they'll take the same drug that locked his father up. Check it out. The same drug that daddy was sent to jail for selling, they will give it to his son so he can sit still long enough to learn about Christopher Columbus. Ritalin and crack are one molecule away from each other. Ritalin is the exact same substance as speed that is sold on the corner. Ritalin is speed. Now, some of you are going to say, if Ritalin is speed, Dr. Johnson, that doesn't make sense because my child is hyper. So the medicine they give him is supposed to slow him down. But speed is an upper. Ritalin is an upper. So why are they giving a hyper child a stimulant instead of a depressant, a neurological depressant? The answer, brothers and sisters, is because they found out that if you overstimulate the brain, it goes into a sort of a shock where it automatically calms the child down. In other words, every time your son takes a pill, brain damage is being affected on that child. All the drugs work by going into the area between the neuron and the synapse. The synapse is the space. Our brains communicate like we communicate. Voice to person, person to person. So you got all these cells in the brain, and the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act is because one cell sends a neurotransmitter a message to another cell, who sends a neurotransmitter a message to another cell. So the drugs come into the synapse, they gap between the neurons, and they block. The drugs block the natural process of the brain. So whenever he takes Ritalin, whenever he takes Adderall, whenever he takes Concerta, whenever he takes Metadate, whenever he takes Cyclert, whenever he takes Risperdal, brain damage is in effect. But let me go a step further. The drugs cannot localize their effect. What do I mean when I say the drugs cannot localize their effect? If I give Princess here some medicine for depression, she's depressed. We ain't going to deal with why. We just going to medicate the depression. Are y'all following me? He's ADHD. We're not going to deal with why. We just going to medicate the symptoms. So nobody ever gets better. Nobody gets better because nobody's dealing with the cause. And why do they not deal with the cause? Because if we reverse the cause, there's no longer a need for the psychologist. There's no longer a need for the psychiatrist. There's no longer a need for the medicine. You stop the financial machine. Mental health ain't helping nobody. How many of us know people who've been getting therapy for 30 years and still crazy as hell? How many of us got kids who got a wraparound? They got a behavior specialist. They got a mobile therapist. They got an inpatient therapist. They got an intensive case manager, and still crazy. Because mental health is the new hustle. Mental health is the new hustle. Nobody's helping these children. Now, let me read you the criteria for ADHD. Listen to this and tell me what you think of this. This is the criteria. If you get my book tonight, it's in there. Okay? Fails to give close attention to detail, has difficulty sustaining attention, does not listen when spoken to, does not follow through on instructions, has difficulty organizing tasks, is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort. Since when do children engage in sustained mental effort? How many of us in this room right now can engage in sustained mental? I've never engaged in sustained mental effort. When I was going through college, I had to take regular breaks because I ain't got that type of mind that can be on something for an hour straight. Are y'all following me? So why are we expecting children to engage in sustained mental effort? They are babies. Babies don't do that. Loses things necessary to complete tasks, is easily distracted, taps or fidgets with the hands or feet, leaves their seat when they're supposed to stay seated, runs or climbs when it's inappropriate. Runs or climbs when it's inappropriate. We're talking about children, right? How the hell does a child know that running and playing is not appropriate in here? Unless somebody tells them that. Then we have is often on the go, talks excessively, blurts out answers, has difficulty waiting their turn, interrupts on other people when they're talking, and has trouble playing quietly. What child plays quietly? I'm reading straight from the criteria, brothers and sisters. So if you want to know why we got so many black kids diagnosed with ADHD, it's because the definition is nothing more than normal behavior. I just read normal behavior. Everything I just gave you, every child does, because it's part of being a child. So you know what they've done in America? You know what they've done? They've made being a black boy a disease itself. They've made being a normal black boy a disease itself. And let us be clear. Why do our boys have so much trouble adjusting to public education, charter education, parochial education, white private school education? Do you know why our boys struggle so much? It's because the schools are run by women on a female culture with female expectations. And if you're not able to conduct yourself like a female child, you will be marginalized and objectified as a problem child. That's the problem with school. A masculine boy is going to have issues in school because schools cater to the female child. Who expects a boy to sit still for 7 hours straight? A lady can do that because she has estrogen. She doesn't have testosterone. And it's even difficult for girls. But girls are socialized to be inactive. Boys are socialized to be active. Not to mention that African children come from a rhythmic culture that prizes activity while you learn. We learn better when we moving around. We learn better when we can conversate in dialogue. That's our culture. But when you go to school, you're just supposed to sit there and be lectured to for 7 hours straight. And if you can't sit still, you have a problem. You see what they've done? They're blaming the children for what the schools don't do. They're blaming the children for what the schools don't do. That's the problem with school. Black boy wants to learn. Black boy wants an education, but he don't want to be castrated in the process. He don't want to be disrespected, impugned, and denigrated by racist white female teachers and reactionary black female teachers. Let me not leave out the Negroes. Because I'll be honest, most of the time I'm fighting for our children, I'm fighting black principles, not white ones. And I'm fighting black principles who came from the same ghettos as the children that they're supposed to be helping. I'm giving it to you real. I'm a principal myself. Even when I was principal, I had to fight black parents. I want my son tested, Dr. Johnson. For what? Learning disability. Your son is in the 3rd grade. What do you mean? I think he got a learning problem. Well, the boy only been in my school for 1 year. In the school he came from, nobody learned. They ain't made AYP since AYP started. So why don't you give me a chance to work with your son? I want him tested. I'm not testing him because there ain't nothing wrong with him. His problem is your trifling ass. Get out my office. I'm honest with parents. I Joe Clark the whole situation. Because you're not going to hustle your baby for me. I know why you really want him tested. You want that check. You want that crazy check. Everybody hustling a crazy check. Even the grown folks hustling a crazy check. Well, I got news for you. Especially my single parent mamas. You playing schizophrenic, getting a psychotic disorder so you can get $700 a month? Guess what's going to happen? The minute that school wants you to put that boy in special ed or on drugs and you don't agree with that school, they're going to call Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services is going to do the research. They're going to find out that you got a psychotic disorder for which you taking medicine. Now, it ain't real, but you play crazy to get the crazy check. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to come to your house and they're going to threaten you. And they're going to say, put them on the medicine or we taking your children because we've determined that you're not psychologically fit to raise these kids. Now, you're not crazy. You just pimped the system for a check. But because your ass was greedy, they're going to now use it to force you to put your son in special ed on medicine. It happens all over the country. You can't use white supremacy to fight it. It will not fight itself. So y'all need to be careful about that.